whether we like it or not, Second Look's brand, as seen by other people, will be squishy centrism. It will be like Andrew Yang type stuff, where it's like wonky and like, hey, everybody, let's all get along. It's third way. No, we're not ideological. We're not particularly libertarian about this. We're
we
not.
listen to both sides.
Yeah, we're not Marxists, right? It's going to be squishy centrism. And as much as moderates or centrists like to pretend, that is an ideological position. When you choose centrism, you are choosing an ideology. And
Well,
I don't think
Yes.
I think it's honest to
okay.
pretend that it's not.
Here's a question.
Yeah.
Here's a question. Does news have to be political? Because I think it doesn't have to be political necessarily. I don't know. Because, like, understanding the world so that you can work with reality better, right? Like that's not political. I don't know if that
Which
makes sense.
facts you include and which how you explain those facts usually has a position implied, right?
Yeah.
But
So,
we
like,
try to include facts from different angles.
perspectives.
Yeah, different perspectives.
So,
But we don't tell you which one, like, this is the one, right? Sometimes we can even include contradictory stuff and be like, here's the evidence for this, here's the evidence for this. I guess.
Yeah. Or maybe
Yeah.
from this person's perspective, they say this, like the people who believe this, and the people who believe this kind of like say this, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I mean, usually the writers and the editors have some kind of political perspective.
But what if we all have different ones? Because we have a really broad range. I mean, there's some similarities in that none of us fall within, but I mean, I disagree with all of the writers on something.
What do you think, Nick?
Do I think the news is inherently political?
Yeah, like does news have to be political is the question. Yeah.
God, fuck. Oh yeah, that's okay. So two number one.
Okay. Also,
yes. News is inherently political because even in like the heyday of like 1960s, 1970s, news wasn't political. The news was carrying a lot of water for a lot of people back then.
Totally.
Yeah, like there was stuff that like if you wanted access to the administration, there's stuff you knew you couldn't say, right? Like so even in the era of non-political news, they carried
access.
And like let's say I think more and more people in the United States are like socialist or nationalists or whatever. Try to find their view shown in like a lot of political a lot of publications, even back then, would be difficult. So
what you leave out of your news is
like you were saying, what you decide to include. You said sort of like 2 posts. That is what is acceptable to include in American news, and you just made an editorial decision, and that's ideology. But let's say that the overwhelming amount of the country believes in those 2 posts, right? And that's what we mean by non-ideological news, which is like, okay, it's operating within a range of decency. Let's say that. Even then the creation of other political media that's not yours will necessitate yours to be political. Because the second there's another media outlet saying, okay, here's everything that's false, and here's everything that's true, and the people that are including that other information, well, they're telling you a lie, that side just politicized you, whether you liked it or not. You do not exist. There's no such thing as apolitical. News are political. You exist in a political realm. And if you don't politicize yourself, other people will do it for you. So I fundamentally believe there's no such thing. You can try to be fair. You can try your best to be truthful. Those are things you can do. But at the end of the day, it's still political.
Yeah. I don't know. So I was talking to a friend who's like pretty hardcore leftist, like pretty far left. And I had tried to explain Second Look multiple times, and I felt like he wasn't getting it. And then there was one time we had a conversation, and he finally got excited about it. And he was like, oh, he's like, when you explain this, you need to like change the paradigm that people are operating in, because they're like in this world of politicized kind of left-right news, and you need to find a way to be like, we're not doing that, like we're doing something else, and really kind of shift how people are thinking about it, if that makes sense. Because for example, our healthcare article, right? That's the only one that I've written by myself. And that's the one that to me embodies what I would like Second Look. I mean, I like all the stuff we've put out, but that article is like what I want to move towards more of. And it's talking about how, you know, we're arguing about universal healthcare, you know, like who's going to pay for it. But really, we need to talk about why is it so expensive in the first place. And so the whole article, it's citing like scientific research, because a lot of research has been done on this. Like there's a ton of scientific studies that have tried to figure out why the US healthcare system is so expensive. And, you know, there are different conclusions, there's different aspects to it. But it's a heavily, heavily cited piece that is just talking about like, here's this scientific study that's saying like this is part of the problem, and then this is part of the problem, and this is part of the problem, and this is how this plays in with this. And it makes no pitches for like, so this is what we need to do. So we need universal health care, or we need like, it makes no political pitch, if that makes sense. It's just saying like, here is this information, like this is who's paying this person, and this is who's paying this person, and this is how this affects this. And it's just citing stuff. You know, it's not my opinion. It's this is the citation, and you can believe it or not. Like you can go read that paper and you can, you know, decide if you believe it or not. I say exactly where it was published, you know, and so you know how strong the source is. And does that make sense? So I would say a piece like that is not political, because it's literally, it's like information. Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, it makes sense, but I would say it is.
Okay. How so?
Because one time I tried to get healthcare in Canada and I had to wait for 7 months. There you go. Like that's what you're gonna run into. All the same arguments you put down on the piece, I've tried to make them to people, and like many different pieces have tried to make those arguments before, just purely based on data. And what you run into is a principle.
Okay.
You run into a certain right-wing principle that disagrees, that says, oh, if the state controls this, here are going to be the downsides.
But that's irrelevant, because it's not a political article. Like literally either side can read it, and I don't think either side would disagree with it, because they can read it and they can be like, okay, so here's why I think that my solution would address this. Right?
So we need to privatize more.
Yeah. So
okay,
people
so
will read it and think that,
and then someone can walk away with the opinion that
we need to universalize. It doesn't lead you to a like, this is what we have to do politically. It helps with the discussion, right? Because then you have information, you can discuss it more productively. But
so benefit of a doubt, I think number one, there's very few things you can do that with. Like very, very few things you can do that with. And number two, like you can do, let's say and number two, that's just compiling data. Like at a certain point, you're just compiling data. And number three, you might run into the problem at some point of studies that disagree. So
that's okay.
That's the problem though. Like I don't think you're going to get readership if like what you're doing is like compiling data. Like if every article is like this, like a rote recitation of different studies I found, I don't think that's particularly interesting to read.
If it compiles it into a narrative, right? Like this ties together with this ties together with this, and even brings in some of like this. So like with COVID, right? Like how dangerous is COVID? And that question, I've been working on that a bit on and off, you know. So with that question, I've found that the right position is way more concerned with how many people have died of COVID, right? So the article has to go in depth, like how many people have died. Some people are skeptical of the reporting, of the numbers. Some people are skeptical of the treatments, so you explain like the different aspects of how many people have died of COVID, right? And you get in depth on the different opinions, like the main arguments on either side and what they're citing, right? Like, this is what they're seeing that makes them think this. This is what they're seeing that makes them think this. And you're like tying that together into a narrative, right? So it's just data. It's not my opinion. I'm just saying, here's why this, here's why this, here's how it's like analysis, right? Or it's like a meta. So, actually what my friend said was, he was like, so it's like a meta analysis. Kind of, but it's like drawing in all the information into like a cohesive narrative, if that makes sense, of information, of like, it's just cited, but it's information. Does that make sense? And so you have to look at how many people have died of COVID, but then you also have to look at the long-term, like long COVID, right? Because the left is really concerned with that. So then you get into, the studies on long COVID and how much we know about that and whatever. So does that, I'm just trying to explain how I feel like it's completely different from what any other news thing is doing.
Like giving people a place to go to kind of get a compiled set of like relevant information, and like to have like it kind of the lines drawn between the different studies.
But like integrated, like, so that it's not even framed in opposition, right? Because like in terms of COVID deaths, it would just be framed as, we all should consider like how the deaths are counted, and here's some data on how the deaths are counted. Like, here's how the CDC is counting it. But actually, like, every state is counting it differently. And like, there's this concern that people are being counted that died of different things, like in this example, and cite a news story. And does that make sense? So it's not even framed in opposition. Like, it's not even like the right says this and the left says this. It's like we're trying to make sense of what's going on, and we can actually integrate it into a cohesive. Yeah,
I think somebody could say, though, just that what you just said about COVID deaths being counted incorrectly, like somebody actually died of something else, including that fact could be a political decision, right? But somebody could say that.
Yeah.
That it's like, that fact's not relevant.
Facts are political. They are.
Which ones are included? The choice to include which one?
But facts are political. There are certain facts that neither side likes to contend with, and when presented,
that's why if you include both,
yeah,
because
you included the one I don't like.
I know.
You included the one I don't like.
You could say tough to them. You could say like, your problem.
But like, is it not important to have a news source that isn't like, I don't like that fact, so I'm not going to include it? I'm saying we're not doing that, and that's why we're not political, because we are literally like, I literally go out and talk to my friends on either side, and I'm like, what are the most important things to you? Like, what are the strongest arguments? What are you seeing? And that's why we do peer review as well, in case I miss something. Like, but the idea is that we're taking, not like super fringe if like hardly anyone believes it, right? But like, this is a super well-known thing on this side, and so it needs to be in there. And so we're trying to take like all the well-known stuff, as long as there's a source for it, legitimate source. Usually we usually, if it's a fringe source, I would just say, there's a source that is like someone's blog, but so you would know how strong that source is. But does that make sense? So it's definitely a lot of work. But I feel like
it doesn't work with everything.
What?
It also only works with like a certain set of things. Like, I can see that being written about COVID, perhaps, maybe COVID. I can see that being written saying that, the United States has a lot of people in its prisons. But that's as far as you can go with the conclusion, because whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's a political opinion. I can see that with healthcare. But for example, I've written articles about planned obsolescence, Cuba, elections, election campaign finance, and Ukraine. None of those things you can do that with. And by and large,
That's
we
the
live in a
kind
world
of-
of opinions, and then facts which are colored by opinions. And I think facts are inherently political too, which facts you choose to accept and which facts you choose not to.
I want to add something there. I think that which facts you include is political, but I think if you want other people who don't usually like to see that fact to like start paying attention to it, you can say like why somebody else cares about it, like why somebody else cares about like an incorrectly reported COVID death, like that to me could be new information to them. Like it's like, oh, well, they care about this because they think people are like trying to steal money by reporting COVID deaths. I'm not sure the real reason, but if that was the real reason, somebody'd be like, oh, well, okay, now I hadn't thought about that.
Exactly. That's exactly the goal. And I'm just saying, it's not political because we're not trying to lead someone to an outcome. I don't think.
Okay,
I
how do you
mean,
describe this as non-political, let's say? Cuomo intentionally, the governor of New York, Cuomo intentionally lied about the COVID deaths happening in the old people's homes. How do you describe something like that as non-political? It's a fact that it happened. How is it not political?
Is it political?
Yeah, is it political?
It was done by a political candidate. He was not impeached for it.
It depends on the context. It depends on the context.
Well, yeah.
What's the article about?
Just the mere mention of the fact. Is that fact innately political?
I still think it depends on the context.
Yeah, it depends on the context. Because go ahead.
No, I just said okay, yeah. I just wanted to know your opinion, yeah.
Yeah, because at least when I read stuff, it seems like there are left biased, news that tends to be well, I mean, the facts they include and stuff are certainly a thing, and the facts they don't include. But then also they tend to be very disparaging towards right opinions, right politicians, right, just like anything that seems and right wing, and they're very concerned about Nazis and all this stuff. So they have their kind of their spiel, and then right wing sites have their the communist left and their all this stuff that they're concerned about and they're scaring people about, and so they have their spiel, and it seems like both sides have an outcome that they're trying to push us towards, and I guess I'm just saying the outcome that so Second Look does have a bias. I mean, our bias is we want the problems to be fixed. Our thing is just we're not trying to tell you how to fix them. We just want to help you understand the problem as accurately as possible, if that makes sense. Like we really don't care how you want to fix them, because I don't know.
It's not for us to decide.
Yeah, it's not for us to decide.
It's just kind of like you want to give like a snapshot of the current debate, the current like things that people are thinking about different issues.
Well, yeah, because I actually think they tend to have they have points on both sides, but they're also both distracting from like the underlying here's an example. BLM. So the left is very like, you have to be pro Black Lives Matter, right? You have to be, or else you're racist and bad person. And the right is like, if you're pro BLM, you are a communist and you're trying to destroy America. Yeah, anti-cop. Yeah, we have to be pro cop. Yeah. Both are distracting from like, initially we were all like, oh shit, like more people are dying in America from cops than in any other country, like significantly more. Oh shit, we actually have like more people in our prison system than any other country. Like, we have like a real criminal justice problem. Like, we have some problems with the system that it seems like affect every race to some degree, and they're, it's like affecting us all, but we're divided over like this movement, this
superficial.
specific, superficial, that we don't actually like, but the thing is, we don't understand the problems well enough, and when there's like a slogan or something, different sides can make that mean something different,
Yes,
right?
that absolutely happens.
That's politicizing it, right? So when different sides think it means something different, they can hate, they're like this side hates it, this side loves it, but they're talking about different things. So
All Lives Matter is a great example of that. The two sides make that mean totally different things.
Exactly. So what I want Second Look to do is to be like, let's look at the criminal justice system. Maybe there are some things, I don't know, like, we should discuss there. So let's look at, how is the criminal justice system working? Like, how...
Well, I think it works great. And I think, in fact, the reason why the United States is so little crime is because we throw people in jail. It's inherently ideological. Like, you are both this approach of like, just the facts, ma'am, which in essence is it's a Vox explainer, it's a less ideological Vox explainer, is what you're talking about.
But
it
but
limits
you can
both,
say...
it limits you insanely in scope and readership. Like, you would never be able to write an article about Black Lives Matter. You'd be able to write an article about, oh, here's the amount of people in jail. Like, and that limits you. It limits your analysis. It breaks your BS meter, like your ability to detect when you're receiving like incorrect input about something, if you have to include everything from both sides. Because there's something that some sides say which are just wrong. Like, it's not like, So it's fundamentally inhuman in a way, I think. Like,
you can point that out, though.
Exactly.
What they're
You
saying
can
is
point
wrong.
that out. Exactly.
Hmm?
You can point out that...
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
And then you're political again. Then you're political again.
No,
So
you're not. Not if it's factually wrong.
Facts are political. I'm sorry. Facts are political. They are.
Okay.
The truth is political.
Well, then,
what? First of all, even if you think there is a truth, like, some things aren't true. Like, there's no way to know whether they're true or not. There's no way to like know 100% for a fact if broken window policing in the 90s in New York City led to falling crime. You can make that argument, but there's no way to know that for a fact. That's political.
Right, we're getting into epistemology now. But
we're talking about epistemology, basically.
It's like, I think I'm getting a more clear view of your goal, Stacia.
I am too.
So this is helpful. Even if we are not agreeing necessarily on the definition of the word political, like what it means for an article to be political.
Yeah.
But like, you've made your view more clear that it's like, not be political, an article needs to at least try to not lead somebody to a conclusion about a policy.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah, and it should steelman like the main positions on the thing.
Yes.
And it can say, like, we looked into this and actually, like, like, we found this, so it can, it doesn't have to say everything is right or anything like that. It can take the reader on the journey, kind of like, this is a strongly held position. We like, this is the evidence that's cited, but then we checked that evidence and we found this, and then but then there is this counter argument, by the way, so I almost feel like our articles need to take on like really small pieces at a time, so that you can do that much